Well, let's talk about gender, because you studied insects, I guess, right?
I did.
Insect evolutionary biology.
Social behavior, animal personality, broadly speaking.
Did that include studying the behavior of the different sexes and mating rituals and stuff?
Not so much. So I studied social spiders mainly for my dissertation, and their colonies were almost entirely female. There's like a 10-to-1 male to female ratio.
So anyway, you have a PhD, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just ignore everything else, and we'll just say PhD from now on. Everything you say is academic. Boom, expert. We'll just he's got a PhD, therefore listen to what he has to say.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, I think we can talk about the gender thing too, because now it's not just about race. They do the exact same thing to gender. They've taken the word gender and they've beaten it to a point where it's unrecognizable, and I don't even know what they're trying to say anymore. Because at first they said that no, gender and sex are different things. Sex is biology, but gender is social construct. Now they're saying there's no biological sex. I mean, they've been saying that for years, but that's where we've gotten.
Yeah, I mean, those are like the second wave feminists they wanted to deconstruct gender as like the social construction that keeps males and females playing these certain roles in society, but they definitely wanted to keep a very strong notion of biological sex, because sex was the object. It was the physical entity that people are identified that you can use to then discriminate people. People are discriminated against because of the perceived sex that they are, and this was something that the second wave feminists were very aware of. But now we see this third wave intersectional feminism, where they're blurring the boundaries between sex and gender. They're the same thing, or they're different depending on the context and how they want to win an argument.
Right. Yeah.
And they've completely decentered biological sex from the talk of women's rights. So now we can't even talk about the actual basis of the oppression of certain individuals based on their sex, because now it's just a state of mind. But, for all I could be gender fluid. I could be going back and forth between male and female in my mind.
Well, in the first segment you were a dude, then you were a woman. Now you're back to being a dude again.
I mean, it just switched again.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
So, but there's nothing that changes physically about me. You can't see it, and so the idea that we should be centering a state of your mind, of how you feel about yourself in relation to your body, as the object of oppression just makes absolutely no sense.
I think you said something. They want to win an argument. It's almost like they're toddlers, like their mental maturity is that of a 7-year-old who's like, "Nuh-uh, you're dumb. No, I'm smart. That's racist. Nuh-uh, you're not allowed to say it.
Yeah, that's how it manifests itself. Is very, I mean, they have so much snark in their arguments. It's just they get brownie points for how snarky they are. But it also boils down to sort of this, what would I call it? Gender critical theory. Mainly queer theory is what they're using to just try to blur the boundaries between male and female, because again, you can kind of keep going back and you see these certain themes. They think that there's power dynamics just by the fact that you're categorizing things. Male and female, are these real entities? Well, no, these is just a white Western notion of how people try to oppress certain groups by maintaining these binaries and forcing people into them. So that's sort of where we are right now in terms of third wave feminism and gender and sex.
I think we may be reaching a point where I don't know if the critical gender theory people can actually pass this. And it is, you think they'll be able to just keep going and doing whatever they want, or?
I don't think so, because it's one of those things. I mean, I've said it before that this is one of the last tests for reality. It's like reality's last stand in a way. If we can convince a large swath of America or humanity that there's no such thing as male and female, then you can just roll ahead and get anything you want in there, because it's one of the most things that I think, well, luckily almost everyone who's not super woke leftist realizes that male and female are different. Almost everyone on the right's going to acknowledge the fact that males and females are real and different. Probably most people on the left as well, especially in the realm of sports. I think that's where it's going to really show.
I don't know, man. I look at the younger generation, and there's a left-wing meme that mocks the right's 5th grade 20-year-old understanding of biology, and the angle they're taking is science is supposed to change because we learn more, and we heard it from Bill Nye on Netflix. We learned a whole lot. Now it's to spectrum, and there's not male and female. It's like male, female, male, just weird gradient between the two, huh?
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're reaching a point where there's going to be systems in place that are going to be very difficult to overcome. So one example, Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a structure. It functions in a specific way. You can't use many of these broken definitions because you need to be able to say word means this and link to another word. And it has to be it's basically like you're looking at an actual structure of a building. You can't just randomly place things, the building won't stand. If the building is already there, you can't move blocks out. So I'll give you an example. This is the Wikipedia page for woman. A woman is an adult female human. End of story. What's a female? Well, female is specifically defined as it is the sex of an organism or part of an organism that produces non-mobile ova, egg cells. Barring rare medical conditions, most female mammals, including humans, have 2 X chromosomes. So Wikipedia, you can't just go and look. They even locked the page. Isn't this crazy? It's semi-protected, probably because people
bombarded.
Yep, trying to change it. Here's the problem. Ask any one of these critical gender theorists, what's a defined woman?
Oh, they can't do it.
Because woman is adult human female. What would they say it is?
They would say a woman is anyone who lives and identifies as a woman. And then when you drill down on that, well, how does a woman live and identify? Well, then they just get into certain stereotypes of masculinity and femininity.
And then all of a sudden,
even though they'll insist that it's not based on stereotypes. Whenever you drill down on saying like, how does it mean to live as one? What does it mean to identify as one, or express yourself as one? It boils down to stereotypes.
This is
progressive, conservative stereotypes of them. It's backwards.
Interesting, right?
This is why I think a lot of what we see. I was reading about rapid onset gender dysphoria. You're familiar with this?
Oh yeah.
And there was one study I was reading. I think it got pulled actually. I'm not sure. It said that like
Lisa Littman's paper.
I don't know which one, but they said 85% of trans children are female to male. Did you read that?
Yeah.
Is this just, I'm going to say it, internalized misogyny? Because here's what I got to say. They talk about stereotypes, right? That, a woman can look wherever she wants, right? Some women have facial hair. It just happens, and they're still women, right? And so you have a bunch of young women who are calling themselves male names, dressing in male stereotypical ways, almost like a caricature of a man. And I wonder if they just hate women, and they hate womanhood. And it's not about being trans or non-binary. It's about literally just hating femininity and loving masculinity.
I think there's some of that. I mean, if you're going to define gender identity, ultimately boils down to differences in stereotypes, then you get to this point where you have children growing up. They're told these ideas that being a man or woman, or even male or female, because these are the same thing now, is based on gender stereotypes. Now you get a tomboy who has more male typical behaviors, like to hang out with boys, like rough and tumble play, all that stuff. Now suddenly they're questioning their gender identity. Now suddenly they're like, well, I'm more stereotypically male in my behaviors. And then some of this gender theory tells them that you might be a boy.
I mean, nowadays they're saying you are.
You are, yeah. Or at least you're highly suspect. So you get a lot of lesbians who also is very much correlated with gender atypical behavior, more male-like behavior. And so you're basically getting the situation where you have a lot of young lesbians showing up to these gender clinics that are saying that I think I'm a boy because I have, and they list all these male typical behaviors. And then in some states you can just, you can get your puberty blockers or your hormones right across the right over the counter.
So the Wikipedia thing is really interesting to me because right now there's a debate, right? They say, well, you call it whatever you want. Trans women are women, right? That's what the left says. Not according to Wikipedia. According to Wikipedia, because you have to have clear definitions of what both of those things are. So when you're talking about someone who is assigned male at birth and then identifies as female and undergoes transition, that is classified on Wikipedia as trans woman. So if you ask these people, they'll say, no, that's a woman. I'm sorry. Woman is defined on Wikipedia as an adult human female, meaning they produce, barring rare medical conditions.
I'm actually shocked that Wikipedia's hasn't been corrupted. I would expect that to.
I don't think it can. That's the problem. That's where I think the wall is being hit, because you can't have one word linked to two articles. So how does the system function?
Logical consistency is not their strong suit. So
I
imagine they might not care at some point.
Well, no, that's not the issue. The issue is Wikipedia is a digital structure. Logical consistency is mandatory for its function to a certain degree. they could probably create a hybrid article and say a woman is anyone who claims to be a woman, but then what's female? But then, because then they have to address the idea of male and female, but they're already arguing it doesn't exist. How will that impact plants and insects, for instance?
Yeah.
Well, we have very, like, we were talking about this before the show, the anglerfish, right? So I didn't realize it was the angler. They're the ones with the weird little doodads on their heads. Mm-hmm. That's so funny. They have like lights on their faces or whatever.
Yeah,
that's cool. So basically, the female is massive and nasty looking.
Yeah.
And the male is a little nasty looking thing, and it latches to the female,
bites them,
and then just becomes a permanent attachment to the female.
So weird.
Yeah. And then just deposits, sperm and stuff into the female. Constantly. Yeah. Okay. So when you see that biological sex literally exists in nature very obviously, so there's a clash then on personal identity. If they try and go into Wikipedia and change female and male because they want to get rid of it, that would shatter the systems already created around our mapping of biology. It can't. Humanity is tied to the animal kingdom. You can't just claim male and female don't exist because we can see it expressed in ridiculous ways across the animal kingdom. I mean, cardinals, for instance. You got the bright red cardinal and then the little
all
tinted red
like
female.
Yeah.
You have this conflation among the activists where they try to look at, they conflate sexual dimorphism, which is, different features that males and females have, with sex itself. Okay, so if you were to look at something like the gender-bred person that they have.
What is the gender-bred person?
So it's this poster that they have in certain schools. I've heard that it's even being used in some college courses in gender studies, where it lists basically, it has this gingerbread person, and then it labels all the it highlights different areas on the body, like it'll be like gender, and it'll have in their head like how you identify. Then it has a little box that says biological sex, and it's pointing to the crotch of the genderbred person, and in that crotch area where it breaks down biological sex, it will list things like voice pitch, body hair, things like that. Well, these have nothing actually to do with what sex you are. So the biggest conflation is conflating primary sexual characteristics with secondary ones. They'll try to say that if you are an individual and you have a beard and you have, more upper body strength and you have a deep voice, they're trying to say that you're actually more male if you have those traits, even if you're biologically a female. So I use an analogy that it's like bikers and cyclists, okay? Like if you define a biker as someone who rides a motorcycle and a cyclist is someone who rides a bicycle, these are two different types of vehicles, okay? They're very different. One's motorized, has gas, one's you pedal. But then you can also say, well, what are the secondary traits of bikers and cyclists? And a secondary trait of a biker would be, leather pants, skull tattoos, bandanas, smoking cigarettes, whatever, all those things. And you look at bikers or cyclists, and their secondary characteristics are a spandex bodysuit
and those weird helmets.
Yes.
Probably more clean shaven.
They shave their whole bodies,
vegan or whatever you do. Like these are
vegan.
These are.
I'm not sure that one makes sense.
Like those are like secondary traits that are associated with being cyclists and bikers. But if you were to have someone riding a motorcycle who's wearing a spandex bodysuit and all the stuff a cyclist typically wears, they wouldn't magically become a cyclist. They would still be a biker because they're riding a bicycle.
That's a good way to put it.
Motorcycle. You can have the secondary sex characteristics of males or female. That doesn't have anything to say about what your actual biological sex is, which has to do with what is the reproductive anatomy that you have. What has it been organized around the production of sperm or ova? You don't actually have to make sperm or ova to be a male or female, but what is your reproductive anatomy? How is it developed? What is it centered around the production of?
I like that.
Well, so all that stuff in mind, there's how do you take the existing scientific infrastructure and I mean Wikipedia is a great example specifically because you click words to link to articles. If you can't change the article and have one word mean two things, that's a key component of the critical race theorists, of the critical gender theorists, is having one word mean multiple things at the same time.
Yeah, well, they're against any categorization whatsoever, so
Wikipedia's just got to go.
So Wikipedia, we could probably make their own Wikipedia or something.
Wikipedia. Ooh, that's a good one. That'd be a funny one to make.
We should get that domain.
Seriously.
Someone just bought it. Why'd you say
no.
that? Wikipedia. Someone probably got it already. But you could do all satire and actually, no, you could actually break down the absurdity of their beliefs.
In a way, that's kind of what James Lindsay's new discourses is. It's basically well, he calls it translations from the wokish.
Oh, yeah,
but,
yeah.
It's basically Wikipedia.
Yeah, so I've seen, I think it was Heather Heying and Brett Weinstein talk about this. They like that sex is bimodal. Have you heard that?
I've heard that. I don't agree with that statement, but
what they often show when they say that is that 99% of males and females fall within a very specific range, but there is an extreme that slightly cross each other in terms of like estrogen or testosterone or masculinity or femininity. They don't connect though. So the idea is you can have a male who is more stereotypically female and effeminate than the average female, but still be producing sperm and being male. They don't connect. They're just two different independent trees that can surpass each other on a scale of femininity to masculinity. Mm-hmm. But what the left does is they say it's a spectrum and they connect them. Yeah. So as though that at some point you actually switch to the other side and your body starts producing the other,
Yeah, so if you're looking at like the secondary sex characteristics like breast size and facial hair and body weight or whatever, those are very bimodal. Like they're correlated with sex, but they're not definitional and of sex. But then there's this other structure underneath of sex, which is basically the binary male or female, even though the secondary traits can sort of map on over the top of that. Mm. I usually use it as like, I do like a coin flip analogy because, you have heads and tails on a coin. About 1 out of every 6,000 flips with a nickel will land on its edge.
Is that true?
Yeah.
6,000?
They have a study.
Wow.
Yeah.
And land on its edge.
Yeah, and that's almost the exact same rate of intersex individuals that are in the population that have somewhat ambiguous genitalia that might not be easily classifiable as male or female. Not always, but sometimes it can be pretty ambiguous. So what a lot of the trans activists try to say is the existence of these intersex individuals, these 1 out of 5 or 6,000 individuals, they're calling into question the existence of males or females. Well, that's kind of like saying that just because a coin can land on its edge, that means that heads and tails are not real, discrete outcomes. So right. Male and female, they're discrete outcomes. If you're a male, you're just as much as male as a male who's got a weaker beard, who's not as tall, who's got a high voice. There's not like more or less male there. You're just, it's a discrete category. Even though we can acknowledge that there is an edge, someone might land on the edge where they could have ovotestes, they might not, they're infertile, they don't produce either sperm or ova, they have ambiguous genitalia. And who's going to say whether this individual's male or female? I don't think, maybe in some instances you can't quite assign them to, or categorize them to one sex.
It's one of the things they actually bring up because there are some people who are intersex who look like they're male or look like they're female, but they're intersex. Yeah. And there's a bunch of different,
most intersex conditions are sex specific. Which a lot of people don't tend to realize.
Like, what do you mean by that?
So, like, let's say like Semenya, for instance. She has a condition called 5-ARD, which she has basically...
Well, so real quick, who is she?
She's the South African runner, basically the Olympic runner. And she's recently been banned from competing in the Olympic in some events because she was, assigned female at birth, but... she has a condition that basically make it so your male genitals don't develop when you're in utero. So you're basically born and your genitals can look stereotypically all female to sometimes they can also look male depending on how severe your case is. And so she presumably has more feminine looking genitalia because she was marked down as female at birth. But her condition is a condition that only affects biological males. So she's XY, she has internal testes. That's why her testosterone level is so high that she can't compete in these leagues. Because they have certain rules for athletes who have her specific condition.
But did they used to? Like, they didn't used to. They just be like, you look like a woman. Congratulations, you can run.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole history of how people were banned and kept out of certain categories for the woman's category. And there's some horror stories of what people were subject to back in the day as well, but people try to make it they say that Semenya's she's a woman, she's a female, that's what people say, but no one ever really brings up the fact that Semenya is actually XY male and has testes.
Is it fair to say biologically male in that capacity, or is it?
I would say biologically male.
Interesting.
People with her condition have fathered children before, so if that puts it into perspective.
Well, the only thing that really matters is everyone is deserving of the same equal rights under the Constitution in our country and human rights in the world, period. And I think that's one of the things they try to use to make it seem like conversations like this are meant to attack an individual's rights or anything like that, and it's not. Thanks for checking out this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. We do the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., so come back to check us out when we go live. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, and we are also available on all podcast platforms for free if you want to listen to us there. Thanks for hanging out, and we will see you all next time.